Yeah, right.
I don't know if there's something deeper.
No. I don't know. Now all I want to get rid of this.
Enjoy it.
Shabbat Shalom. We're beginning with the Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem is on page number 5 in the Siddur, page 5. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Miri Melech, Malachei Halochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bo'achem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Miri Melech, Malachei Halochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Miri Melech, Malachei Halochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Miri Melech, Malachei Halochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We turn now to Yedid Nefesh on page number 10. And the first two stanzas on page 10, Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh Harachaman Meshochavta El Ritzonah Yaron Savda Kemo Ayal Yishtachaveh Mohagara Ki Yeravo Yedidotah Minofetzu Bechol Tam Hadur Naeh Zivolam Nafshi Cholat Avotoh Elohei Rafanah Be'arat La Noam Zivach Az Titchazek V'Titrapeh V'Hayetavach Shirkat Dolam Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai Dai Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai Dai Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai Dai Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 Yadadai Dai 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 On page 11, L'chud, which means, come on folks, it's time to sing together. That's what L'chud means. L'chud Adonai, Navi Aletzur, Yishenu, Nikanot ki el gadol Adonai u'melech gadol al kol Elohim asher biyado mekerei haaretz v'toachot avim bo asher biyado mekerei haaretz v'toachot avim bo. On the English side, the bottom stanza. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us. And on page 12, the last stanza. For 40 years, I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way. So in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. Who do you think of the people wandering in the wilderness for 40 years would have been angry? All of them.
All of them?
All of the nation. We would expect the nation, they're expecting, come to get in, right? So who else would have been angry besides the plain old guys on the street, guys on the desert? Who else would have been angry? God would have been angry. Why?
Because he wants us to behave.
He wants us to behave, and he wants us to get in because it's a good place to be. Who else would have been angry besides all the average people and God? Miriam could have been angry because she worked hard to help get the people out. And besides Miriam, who else would have been angry?
Everybody there.
Right? I think most would have been angry. Y'all were angry.
Because they wanted to be there and they were not going to be able to stay.
So why do we start the Friday night service with this song? Perhaps as Shabbat starts, we're trying to learn a lesson to let the anger of the past week go away. Let's get rid of the anger. And let's enter a place where we're trying to bring peace in our hearts and in our minds and between ourselves and other people.
So where does it say that we put this anger?
We just began by singing. I think it's kind of hard to remain angry when you're singing. Let's continue to sing. On page 21. Page 21. Mizmor leDavid, Halul Adonai V'Elim, Halul Adonai, Kavod V'Oz, Vayayay, Halul Adonai, Kevod Shemo Ishtach, Halul Adonai, B'Hag HaKodesh, Kol Adonai Al Hamayim, El HaKavod Hirim, Adonai sounds. Because sometimes we're trying to go somewhere and we can't quite get the right word. But just a sound, that can help. Now we are singing tonight, and we have some song sheets. The first song sheet is Nachamu. And allow me to explain why this is part of the service this evening. Because tomorrow's Haftorah begins with the word Nachamu. Nachamu is a verb. Anytime you hear an U at the end of a word, you can guess the verb. It means y'all. Shema is to listen or hear. Shimu means y'all listen. Borchu, y'all do baruch. Gadlu, y'all do something with greatness. Hallelu, y'all praise. Nachamu means y'all comfort. Comfort. Nachamu means everyone must comfort. The context is that everyone must comfort each other. Isaiah lived 2,700 years ago, and he saw people in great sorrow and great hurt and distress, and he said, y'all have to work together to bring comfort into the community. That's tomorrow's Haftorah. This is a contemporary melody, and if you look at the song sheets, the first phrase is Davlu Alev Yerushalem Vikiru Aleha, which means speak to the heart of Jerusalem with tenderness. But if you notice the word Yerushalem, it's a little bit out of whack. The Hebrew word for Jerusalem is Yerushalayim. Why is the first phrase here containing the word Yerushalem? It's as if we're missing a letter. There's a grammatical reason and there's a semantic reason. The grammatical reason is that in the ancient days, when people read certain words, they knew what the vowels would have been, and you didn't always need to have every letter there. So the second yud wasn't there. And that's probably the style of the ancient Hebrew writing many centuries ago. But the sermon is that this is coming from a time when there's great sorrow and anxiety and fear about the nature of Jerusalem. So the sermon is, maybe God was a little absent, and the second yud, which is associated with God's name, is missing. So since there's a little bit of God's absence, we have to work extra hard to come together to bring a sense of comfort to one another by speaking tenderly to Jerusalem. Nachnu, Nachnu.
Nachamu, Nachamu,
23, Harari, the first 3 stanzas on page 23, the concluding 3 stanzas on page 25. Harari, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, Shamor Bezachor, B'diborecha, Yishmeanu, Elam Yochad, Adonai Echad, Ushmo Echad, L'Shem Multiferet, V'Litila, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, Lekrat Shabbat, Tovenecha, Kimekor, Adelacha, Merosh, Mikedem, Nesucha, Sof Machzeh, Machshavat Tefila, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, Mikdash Melech, Irmalacha, Komitzei, Mitacha, Vekarav, Lashevet, Emekavacha, V'hu Yachmo, Allah Yechem Allah, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, V'hayim Shisa Shosayach, V'racha Kluko, Mevalayach, Yasis Alayach, Elohayach, Yiksos Katan, Al-Kala, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, Yaminus Motecha, Notzi, Eftadonai, Taritzi, Al Yarish, Ten Parti, V'nesnecha, V'nagila, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, Boim Shalom, Ater Balach, Kames Simcha, Ovetzola, Tochem Mune, Am Sedola, Boim Allah, Lecharori, Lekratala, Tene Shabbat, Lekabala, remaining standing. Because Shabbos is now here. And Shabbos came in because we were singing together. On page 28, we're standing. And the psalm, the last 2 stanzas of the Psalm of Shabbat, is talking about those who stand up straight, like a tree. And what does it mean to stand up straight, like a tree? It means to strengthen the world, to offer beauty, oxygen, nourishment, stability, care, shade, protection. That's who we are. The last 2 stanzas. The righteous flourish like a date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's corridors. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock, and there is no flaw. Tzadikatar yifrach, ke'erez balvanam, yizkeh shetulim, bebeit Adonai, b'chatzrot Eloheinu, yofrichu, od yedon b'seva, tish'enim v'rananim, yeyu le'hagid, ki yashar Adonai, tzuri, and we are seated now. And before we go on with the Ma'ariv service, we have another song This is a song sheet, and the lyrics are by Josh Nelson, and nickname you might say is Ezehu Chacham. Ezehu Chacham means who is a wise person? This is a question. It's based upon a message, lesson from the Mishnayot of Pirkei Avot, as it said in Ahavas, and we have here the text before us. Ezehu Chacham, who's a wise person? We're not talking about somebody who's got an IQ of 170. From this point of view, within the Jewish tradition, a wise person is somebody who's able to learn from other people, able to listen and to learn from other people. And I'm thinking about what you and I experience every time we engage with news sources, and people are shouting and refusing to learn from others. Our message from Pirkei Avot is very current and very significant. Let's sing along with Josh Nelson.
Do you hear? Do you listen? Do you look or do you see? Can't feel the separation because of you, because of me. There are truths in one another
The left margin, the interpretive reading, the left marginal note on 39A. Beloved are you, eternal God, by whose design the evening falls, by whose command dimensions open up, and eons pass away, and stars spin their orbits. You set the rhythms of day and night, the alternation of light and darkness sings your created word. In rising sun and in spreading dusk, greater of all, you were made manifest. Eternal, everlasting God, you would always be aware of your dominion. Beloved of you, what enough for this hour of night. Yochai v'kayam, tamid yimochalenu l'ambled, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv ha'ravim. On page 40, moment of silence, the second bracha of the Ma'ariv. Quiet. Yavazachal teshimimenu olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema, page 41. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושימרתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקרבך וקשרת לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות ביניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך a few moments of silence on page number 42. On page 44. On page 45. And I love and respect all my colleagues, but I disagree with this first word on top of page 45. I think there's an error in translation. It's not allow us to sleep peacefully. Hashkivenu means, oh God, help us lie down in tranquility. And so now I'm going to ask you a question. Why is the Hashkivenu starting that way? Hashkivenu, God, help us, make us lie down in tranquility. And the answer I'm going to offer is that because you and I know that as people of conscience, it's very hard to go to sleep at night when we know that other people can't. There are people out there in the world who cannot safely put their heads on a pillow and go to sleep. They may have no pillows. They may have no beds. They may not have no walls, no rooms. They may have no sense of safety. And that should trouble every single one of us, because we're people of conscience and care. And maybe that's why this prayer begins with Hashkivenu, which is in Hebrew a command. God, you make us lie down comfortably, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to. So tonight, in a few hours, when we each get into his or her own bed, we might be tossing and turning, trying to get comfortable knowing there's people out there who are in no way secure. And I want you to take hold of this prayer, the conscience within this prayer. And maybe it'll help you rest easy tonight. And maybe it won't. Hashkivenu, Adonai, our God, to sleep peacefully. Awaken us to life, O Sovereign. Spread over us your canopy of peace. Restore us with your good counsel. And save us for the sake of your name. Shield us. Remove from us enemies, pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you, God, watch over and deliver us. And you, God, are sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace, now and forever. May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem. Ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukkot shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. That's up page 46. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et hashat la'asot et hashabat l'dorotam barit olam 47 to 52. And as we rise, doing something a little bit different for just a moment before you begin, I want you to look into this R, into the Aron, and perhaps from your seats, you can see the tablets which artistically represent the Yetzer Dibrot, the 10 great words. By the way, the Hebrew term is 10 words, not 10 commandments. That's an English term. Because I don't think all of them are commandments. We'll talk about that another day. I continue to bring this up. So we call them the 10 words. This plaque was above one of the Aronot, either on Gotham Street or on Conti Street, on the outside of the Aronot. And then, when we moved into this building, it was brought here, and it didn't fit with the art, with the marble, so it was placed inside. But I want you to think about what it means to have the 10 words, artistically and symbolically, from our prior synagogue, housed with our Torahs. And as we rise and we offer our silent prayer, ask yourself what it means to be a people that has received 10 words consistently for the past 3,300 years, and to be responsible for transmitting those 10 words into the future. We offer a silent prayer. Tomorrow, we read a fascinating Torah reading. It's a Torah reading where Moses knows that in just a little while, he's going to die. He's about 119 and a half, or maybe almost turning 120. We don't know his exact birthday. So at about 119 or 120, knowing that he's going to die, and later it's described that he dies very comfortably and peacefully, that's all right. And by the way, as you know, there's an old Jewish expression that says, may you live to be 120. Why? Because it's as if each one of us would be like Moses, Halavai. The Hebrew is, Ahavas Chesed maybe 120, but there's a cute little takeoff of that in modern Israeli slang, in Israeli shmooze, you might say, may you live to be 100 and look like you're 20. So in this week's Parsha, as Moses is approaching his, give or take, about 120th, he speaks to the people. And this is now about 38 or so years after having stood at the mountain in Sinai. And he reminds them of the 10 great words. And you just saw the plaque inside the ark, and we are all familiar with the 10 great words. I'm the Lord thy God, took care of the land of Egypt. By the way, that's why you don't call it the commandment, because the first statement is, I'm God who took you out of Egypt. So that would be a command. And then don't take God's name out of vain, and don't cut on foreign objects, and so on. We all know the big 10 words. But what's interesting is that when Moses is saying these 10 words to the people tomorrow, let's say 3,300 years ago, they're not the words that he brought down to them on the stone plaque 38 years ago. They're different words. They're still 10, but there are a couple of differences between what he's saying tomorrow and what he brought down in stone form 38 years before. How could that be? And the first answer is because the people here at his base that he's speaking to are not the people who were there at Mount Sinai 38 years ago. So in a way, he's got to speak to them differently because they weren't there. So he's recapping the 10, and what's really interesting is that when he speaks to them about Shabbat, for example, he says, observe the Shabbat and keep it holy. It's called Shabbat, and nobody in your family is supposed to work, and we all understand that. And remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and God took you out of the land of Egypt. But what's the problem? These people weren't slaves in Egypt. They were born during the wilderness. They were born in the past 37 and a half or 38 years. They weren't born in Egypt, and they weren't slaves in Egypt. So why does Moses change the words and say, remember, you once were a slave? He's changing the basis for Shabbat. I think he's teaching them something. He's reminding them of their immediate past. He's reminding them of what their parents went through in order that they themselves can be where they are today. Because Moses is now an old man, and he's anticipating when he's not going to be around anymore. So he's speaking as a teacher, as a leader, perhaps as a father, maybe even as a grandfather, could be a great-grandfather. He's 120. And so he modifies the commandment within Shabbat, and he says, I know that you weren't a slave in Egypt, but you have to see yourselves as if you were a slave in Egypt to better understand the immediate history that brought you to where you are today. Isn't that fascinating?
Can they really, since they weren't a slave in Egypt, so he's saying imagine as if you were.
That's what I'm making a sermon about today.
So how can they really imagine as if they were, if they weren't?
How can they imagine if they were slaves if they weren't? And that's why I think in our own lives, the holiday of Passover is so significant. Because we reenact the exodus from slavery. You and I are well over 3,000 years past the exodus. But every single year we come together as a family, a community. We eat very specific foods. We drink very specific beverages. We act in a very specific manner to try to imagine what it was like to be people who left as slaves, because we're supposed to be sensitive to those experiences. And what's striking to me is that within something as significant as the 10 Commandments itself, we have a modification of our Jewish tradition. We tend to think, oh, the plaques are up on the wall. They're always the same. But if you and I are attentive, and it's in the book right before us that we read every single year, we realize that if you compare the first set to the second set, a change is made. And Moses is not upset. Indeed, he's the one who makes the change, and there's no indication of upset anywhere in the Torah that Moses changed the basis for Shabbat. If you compare the first set, which he brought down 38 years before, it says, observe Shabbat. Why? Because God worked and God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh day. And you and I are very familiar with that. And that's described in what we call the book of Exodus. But in Devarim and Deuteronomy, which we read tomorrow, that's not the basis for Shabbat. Moses makes a change. And both sets of what we call the 10 Commandments are within Torah and held up as established main principles of Judaism. Which means that Judaism within itself can be very flexible. If we can be flexible with our own understanding of the 10 Commandments, which most people hold up as a plaque on a wall to never be changed, then we can be flexible in a number of ways. So the message from this Torah reading is that you and I are supposed to see ourselves in history every single day. And history changes. And how you and I interact with each other changes. And how you and I interact with God changes. And let that not be an issue of upset or conflict or stress. Instead, let that be an element of growth and of learning and of becoming. May we continue to grow and learn. May we be flexible. And may we listen.
What?
Listen. We rise with the language on page number 56. Please now remain standing. Morning Scottish on page number 58. And on this Shabbos we remember with great love Sam Maisel, Rose Derwich, Florence Cohen, J. Max Maisel, Albert Reiner, Kayla Zaremba, Ken Nubel, Evelyn Jacoby, Morris Layden, Rebecca Loeb, Rose Kramer, Larry Hirsch. Remember the loved ones of all of our people in Israel who were taken from all of us. Are there any other names to mention tonight? Perhaps someone at home has a name to share as well. Kaddish together. Yitkadam, Yitkadash, Shmei Ram, Ve'olam Yivrach Hirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayei, V'chol, Beit Yisrael, V'agalam, V'zman Kariv, V'ibru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rama, Mevarach, La'olam, La'olei, La'maya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yithaleh, V'yithalah, Shmei, V'kudesha, B'rihu, Le'ela, Mikol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tishbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiram Ba'ala, V'iburu, Amen. Yehei Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Ya'kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Moab U'yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ya'kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. And may we continue to bring prayer and shalom into our lives. You're seated. We'll conclude tonight. There's a third song sheet, and it's not what we might call a typical Jewish song, but gosh, folks, it's critical and we need it. I think you'll recognize this song when Gadiel plays it over the speakers. What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There
Fellas joining in, thank you for joining in. You're very important to me, to us. We love you, want the best for you. May God bless you with health and peace and love. And may you see yourselves as essential components of this world. May you bring love and peace to the world every day. Shabbat.